send us this presentation?
No.
Okay, I have 7 p.m. I'll call the meeting to order. If we could please rise for the pledge. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So good evening and welcome to the November 14th business meeting of the Milford Board of Education. Can we have a roll call, Ms. Griffin?
Catherine Ailing. Here. Adam DeYoung.
Here.
Megan Doyle.
Here.
Andrew Fowler.
Here.
Tracy Irby.
Here.
Emily McDonough Souza.
Here.
Una Petrosky.
Here.
Cindy Wolf Boynton.
Here.
And Susan Glennon.
Here.
9 members present.
Thank you. We move on to item 3 on the agenda. We have the appointment of a new board member to fill the vacancy in the 1st District. As I explained when we received Ms. Ratner's resignation, her Democratic Party in the 1st District has to nominate an individual to fill her seat, and they've done so. They've nominated Mr. Gary Pellicetti, who is here with us this evening, to serve the remainder of the term. Gary has 35 years experience in public education as a classroom teacher, most of that time in the Talented and Gifted program. He's also served in leadership roles within the Bridgeport Education Association and on the board of directors of the Connecticut and National Education Association. Gary wants to continue to be an advocate for public education. He says that his professional life has been one devoted to strong public education. I have a great deal to offer the city of Milford in its responsibility to provide excellent public education. A great thought to have. Mr. Pellicetti, we look forward to working with you. Ms. Petrosky, do you have a motion?
I do. I make a motion that the Milford Board of Education appoints Mr. Gary Pellicetti to the unexpired term of the vacant 1st District seat.
Is there a second?
A second.
Mr. Fowler has seconded. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Congratulations. We have with us City Clerk Fortunati this evening, who will administer the oath of office to you so that you can take your seat right with us and participate in the meeting this evening.
Okay, can you raise your right hand? Do you solemnly swear that you will faithfully execute and discharge your duties and responsibilities according to law as a member of the Board of Education of the City of Milford to the best of your knowledge and ability, so help you God?
Congratulations. Congratulations, Gary. And again, we look forward to working with you for the next year. All right, we move on to student reports. I believe that Jonathan Law goes first this evening. We have Cole and Skylar, right?
Yes.
Thank you and good evening, board members. It's a pleasure to be with you once again. Before we begin, please allow us to reintroduce ourselves. Skylar Johnson
And Cole Kleiman.
and we'll begin tonight with some law-amazing news. Students and staff within law were encouraged to dress up on Halloween as a part of a costume contest held by the National Honor Society. Everyone who entered was required to pay a fee of $2 or bring in a box of Legos, with all proceeds going to the Legos for Logan charity. The charity was created after Logan passed away from brain cancer at the age of 12. They collect brand new boxes of donated Legos and send them to kids fighting this battle. The categories included within the contest consisted of Best Individual, Best Duo, Best Group, and Best Faculty. Winners will be displayed in the yearbook. Law students and staff were encouraged to donate non-perishables in order to provide Thanksgiving meals within Milford. This drive was held by the National Honor Society and Key Club. Raffle tickets were also given out to each student who participated in the drive. Gift cards for Stonebridge, Crumble, The Plate, and Trader Joe's were given out as prizes. In an in-school field trip on November 11th, Advanced Studio students met with Wings for Peace coordinator Lori Lewis. Students shared artwork they have submitted to the Wings for Peace movement against gun violence. The organization is a nationwide movement through art, which falls under the umbrella of Artists for Peace. Lewis thanked law students and provided moving information about this project. When creating their pieces, Ms. Murphy asked students, "What does peace in America mean to you?" Students were instructed to include some form of wings in the artwork as well. Sculptures and paintings were thus created. Student work will be displayed throughout law in the coming days. Students at Jonathan Law had a Q&A session with current 3-star Lieutenant General John Healy. Mr. Healy is the father of Jonathan Law Social Studies teacher Shannon Healy. He is the current Chief of the Air Force Reserve and Commander of the Air Force Reserve Command. He was promoted to this position by President Biden and confirmed by the U.S. Senate, and the ceremony for this took place in August. Questions were collected from students, and then a handful were chosen and answered by Lieutenant Healy. Senior students and their families had their first introduction to the internship program on November 1st. Students participated in an assembly during common time, while families participated in a virtual evening presentation. In the coming month, each senior will have an individual discussion with the internship coordinators to begin planning their spring internship. Today marks the first day of our Spirit Week and a half to show some law spirit during the countdown to Thanksgiving break. The themes include student/teacher swap, country/country club, white lies, multicultural day, twin day, pajama day, blackout, and law gear. Throughout this exciting week and a half, Law will hold its homecoming dance, powder puff game, and a pep rally. The JLHS Drama Club had 3 very successful showings of the play That Goes Wrong. In academics, the math department has been cooperatively reading, analyzing, and implementing the principles of building thinking classrooms in hopes of cultivating an environment full of vertical workspaces and critically thinking students. The Math Support Center has been a great tool as the quarter comes to a close for law students. The amount of underclassmen visiting the Math Support Center has recently increased, finally reaching some of the students who may have been less aware of the service due to former COVID-19 procedures. The Teaching and Learning Commons has checked out over 700 books since the start of the school year. The Help Desk has learned how to scavenge broken Chromebooks for parts and have had a great time disassembling and reassembling Chromebooks to keep the school together in working Chromebooks. The TLC's library card drive this past Wednesday was a huge success. Teen librarian Danielle Valenzano from the Milford Public Library came to get students signed up for a library card, and hundreds of students signed up. English classes promoted the library, and whole classes were able to come in and apply for a library card. With a library card, students now have access to all the great things a library can offer, including ebooks and audiobooks from the Libby app, access to the streaming platform Canopy, and access to Research at CT, a comprehensive research database. The English Support Center will be receiving a mural painted by the National Art Honor Society. Students have formed a committee within the chapter and are receiving funding from the teachers in order to create an immersive learning environment. The music department just commenced their pastry fundraiser in support of the band and choir. Students and staff were encouraged to purchase the treats.
In law sports action, our girls swimming team is competing tonight at the Class M Championship at Southern Connecticut State University. And congratulations to our boys cross-country captain, Liam Fedigan, as he is All-SEC, All-State, and finished 40 out of 279 runners at the New England Championship this past weekend in Rhode Island. Liam is the first ever Jonathan Law cross-country student athlete to qualify for the New England Championship. Also, congratulations to our girls cross-country captain, Claire Moulton, on her various honors this fall, which include All-SEC and Class M All-State as well. Congratulations to both Elliot Melgar and Declan Waiwoda on earning All-SEC boys soccer honors, and both Demi Carapicchio and Sabrina Lawless on earning All-SEC girls soccer this fall. Our girls volleyball team qualified and won matches in both the SEC and CIAC tournaments. And congratulations to Paige Jelly, who also earned All-SEC honors. Our football team is currently 8-1 as we head into the Thanksgiving showdown with Foreign. Tickets can be purchased by students at the main office at both schools in advance for $5, and on the game day, $7. Updates from our school, counseling, and college and career. On October 25th, Milford families had the opportunity to participate in their virtual financial planning program through a partnership with Barnum Financial Group. This annual event offers tools and resources to better understand financial aid and funding college decisions. During the week of October 24th through the 28th, all school counselors presented to the senior English classes to review post-high school school planning. This included discussions around scheduling appointments with counselors, understanding the college application process, information with vocational/technical schooling and military service, and more. The College and Career Center hosted the annual Military Week, which included information sessions from each branch. Parents and students attended. This coming Friday, the first of 2 ASVAB tests of the year will be conducted. Finally, this week, the school counseling department will hold 2 events: an information session about NCAA admissions and compliance, and the annual Junior and Family Night. Additional information about the outcomes of these events will be shared in the next meeting. Thank you for this opportunity to speak with you all, and we look forward to the next meeting.
Thank you. Foreign, we have Venice and Connor.
Good evening, everyone. Connor and I are so excited to tell you about the happenings at our school in the past month. So to begin, in our art department, advanced photography students took a trip to Morningside where they were able to capture photos with natural lighting and had many options for hands-on learning with light, shadows, leading lines, and composition. Students in Ms. Dotson's drawing classes started the printing process for their dry point edges, and they were designed by artist Albrecht Dürer, who is a master drawer and printmaker. Our Intro to Early Childhood Education class visited Westbrook Nature School in Redding, Connecticut to observe the unique, completely outdoor school environment. Students were exposed to non-traditional teaching, strategies, and guidance in this new environment. Our Teaching and Learning Commons opened up its Foreign's Goodreads Cafe with October spooktacular book tasting events and hosted some of our English classrooms to come by for tastings. Students sampled various October-themed books, including mysteries, thrillers, and horrors. And they will use these guides in the future to assist in making independent reading choices. Personal finance students attended a reality fair this week where they chose a career and completed a simulation to determine how to live on that salary. And they even had the opportunity to speak with financial counselors at the end as well. In our AP Psychology class, students did group presentations about sensation and perception. They selected one of the 5 senses and did a multimedia presentation, which had to incorporate 2 interactive hands-on labs where their peers actively participated in. Ms. Hoffer's Kindness Connection raised over 100 pounds of candy, which was a new record for our candy drive. So this year we partnered up with Pumpkin Delight and Mathewson, and we were so impressed by the outpouring generosity from both of our students and the parents and even our teachers. So we decided to donate to both Operation Gratitude and the Ronald McDonald House. Our students helped to donate baked home goods to our school as we had a fundraiser at one of our football games, and we raised over $700 for the Bristol Police. And on Halloween, we had a costume day where our students and teachers dressed up in creative costumes. Some of them included a vending machine, Heather's characters, the Spice Girls, different food, and even our history department dressed up as characters from Shrek. So we raised over $200, which will be split between the Bethel Center and the Thanksgiving food drive. In Connor and I's Humanities class, we finished our Born a Crime unit, and to finish it off, we completed and presented projects off of the book. Some students researched an African leader, some wrote to the author Trevor Noah, and many students even created South African recipes and dishes, which we got to sample, and they were very yummy. 4 seniors this week and last week were chosen to travel to East Shore and Harborside to show incoming freshmen the opportunities we have at Foreign and what awaits them and that they can look forward to. And lastly, the bake shop continued to make our hallways smell delicious as they finished their yeast unit. So they prepared pizza, dinner rolls, fresh baguettes, round Italian bread, and the most delicious cinnamon rolls. Meanwhile, Advanced Culinary is learning to prepare healthy versions of comfort food using alternative, healthy ingredients, and they prepared Thai noodles, sloppy joes, and penne alla vodka.
Good evening, everyone. Venice and I are very glad to be speaking in front of all of you once again to fill you in on the recent events at Foreign. So to start, College Board recently selected 6 seniors as commended scholars in the 2023 National Merit Scholarship Program. The recognized students included Marina Corman, Violet Wilson, Grace Foley, Justin Gentalen, Skylar Agresti, and Joseph Shakowski. Congratulations to these students. Students also recently participated in the Save a Life Tour in October. the program presented a video that discussed the dangers of distracted driving, which are extremely important to high school students that are out on the road. And also in October, foreign faculty wore purple to support Domestic Violence Awareness Month and the Domestic Violence Awareness Run in New Haven. Their participation was greatly appreciated. Foreign music students also performed at the ribbon cutting ceremony for a new planetarium, and choir student Luke Wickstrom sung the Star Spangled Banner, and the saxophone quartet included Joseph Schakowsky once again, Noah Held, Evan Schoendorf, and Holden Rossi. In addition, a big congratulations to senior Noah Held, who became the first ever student to be selected for the National Association of Music Education All-National Honors Band. Noah has been in the foreign band for 4 years and has played the clarinet, bass clarinet, and bass saxophone in both the concert band and jazz ensemble. Journalism students took a trip to SCSU to meet NBC Connecticut anchor Keisha Grant last month. The students also learned from professors and professional journalists about editing, social media, and how to write and find story ideas. CNA students from the Family and Consumer Science Department also learned how to properly put on and take off personal protective equipment, perform occupied bed linen change, and even how to safely ambulate a patient using a gait belt. In the science department, students in Mr. Wade's science class investigated bathymetry, which is measuring the depths and topography of the ocean floor, and students worked to create their own bathymetric maps of the classroom to emulate the process done by actual marine scientists. In terms of athletics, foreign winter sports also released their tryout dates and times. The sports available for students to participate in include girls ice hockey, boys ice hockey, girls basketball, boys basketball, wrestling, gymnastics, indoor track, and boys swimming and diving. And in honor of our veterans, the Social Studies Department ran their annual fundraiser from November 1st to the 12th to help the Homes to the Brave organization. And this organization provides veterans with food and other necessities, and students brought in donations to their social studies classes to help. Thank you so much to everyone who participated in this fundraiser. It really means a lot. And finally, the Giving Table Club prepared chicken and dumplings and a salad to recognize local veterans at the American Legion. This was the club's first ever giving event, and the members were so proud to make a difference in the Milford community as we celebrate Veterans Day. I thank you all for your time and look forward to speaking with you again in December.
Thank you. So students, you're more than welcome to head out, go about with your evening. I'm sure you might have some schoolwork to do or some other responsibilities. We look forward to seeing you next month.
Thank you.
Thank you. We move on to public comment. Is there anybody in the audience this evening that would like to make public comment to the board? Okay, seeing none, I'll dispense with the public comment statement. We move on to item 6 on the agenda. We have a working agreement that we have to adopt this evening. So Ms. Petrosky, do you have a motion?
Make a motion that the Milford Board of Education approve the settlement agreement between the Milford Board of Education and the Milford Education Association for the period commencing September 2023 through and including August 31st, 2026.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Fowler. Do we have any comments or discussion? I just want to publicly thank Ms. Doyle and Mr. Fowler for serving on that committee. It was a long night, right? So we appreciate the work that you put in. So seeing no other comments, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Chair's report. We're entering into the holiday season, board members. Just a reminder that we have our business meeting on December 12th. We don't have a committee of the whole meeting in December, but then we do move into budget season in January. So I did email everybody, but I just want to remind you that we have our budget workshops are set for January 11th and 12th, and then the 18th and the 19th, with the 19th being a hold date if we need a fourth night to meet. The 11th and the 12th will be virtual, and we will then vote in person on the last workshop night. And don't forget your invitations to the football game that you received. And just a reminder, if you go, wear your badges. And if you don't have a badge, you can see Ms. Griffin and she'll make sure she gets one for you. You have to get one for Mr. Pelicetti, and do you want a badge? And Ms. Irby, so. That's it for my chair's report. Superintendent's report, she just snuck out.
If it's okay, Mrs. Glennon, Dr. Pataya asked that we begin without her, and she'll be back in just a moment. Is that
Certainly,
okay?
thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. So good evening, members of the board. Tonight we're going to start with an instructional highlight on early literacy, and it is my pleasure to introduce to all of you returning board members and new, our instructional supervisor for humanities at the elementary level pre-K5, Ms. Bethany Morrow. We have a number of instructional coaches that I can kind of see behind our podium, and I want to thank our instructional team for being here tonight. We have Nicole Paterla, Megan Del Monte, Karen Coyne, Elisa Petoniak, and Marsha LaFleur. I think I got everybody. And Sarah Monaco, front row. We're so delighted to have our entire instructional team that is working alongside many other colleagues in our schools to support literacy instruction in Milford Public Schools. And as you read recently in a board update, we're looking forward to sharing with the board tonight some continued findings from our 2019 district study. So for returning board members, you'll recall that in 2019 we engaged in a district study to learn about our literacy practices in district and how to really grow a stronger foundation in the area of elementary literacy. And for our new board members, we'd like to also let you know that you'll have a chance tonight to learn what some of those commendations were from the study, and also some recommendations for our next level of work. Specifically, we're going to talk to you about how we've actioned on some of those recommendations already. For example, with the support of the board, really expanding and diversifying our libraries, thinking about how we're aligning high-quality instructional practice in the area to strengthen literacy, and also our work in the area of really ensuring that we have a balanced, comprehensive literacy program. You might also recall from the agenda that was sent to you for this particular instructional highlight, there's some recent information that was released from the State Department of Education on the Right to Read Act. And so there were a number of materials on that act, including the General Assembly bill, and a letter from the Connecticut Association of Public Schools, CAPS, a letter of response to a memo from the CSDE that came out at the end of September, outlining what would really be some sweeping changes in the world of literacy. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. We do have some concerns not only about the potential financial impact, but how some of that work might not be really in line with our district model for high quality instruction. We believe that our work in district to date to really strengthen our curriculum and to focus on high quality instructional practices in the area of literacy is exactly what we need to do to be building a really strong foundation for our youngest readers, writers, speakers, listeners, and thinkers in Milford Public Schools. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Morrow, who will begin our presentation. Thank you, Ms. Morrow.
Thank you very much, Dr. Fettigan and members of the board. As Dr. Fettigan said, ironically, 5 weeks before we shut down in 2020, I stood before this board and I outlined much of what a 2018 program review had entailed. And some of those recommendations you see before you tonight. So one of them certainly being high quality classroom libraries. We knew we needed better books for our students. We needed to make sure all students were seeing themselves in text, and we wanted to make sure they were aligned with the curriculum. We wanted to talk about a comprehensive literacy approach. The term balanced literacy gets a tough name, but we really want to make sure here in Milford Public Schools that we are encompassing all the 5 pillars of literacy, and we are making sure that our students get the best, most comprehensive literacy experience. Finally, another recommendation was that we revise our resources and make sure that they are in alignment with our district model for high quality instruction. With this board's support, we have been able to do all 3 of these. So in the last 2 years, even with COVID, we have updated resources in K through 2. This year, we've updated our instructional resources in 3 through 5. We have also spent quite a lot on redoing our classroom libraries, which we'll talk a little bit more about tonight. Certainly, these are not done. We are never done in the area of literacy, but they have made huge transitions and very important ground moving in terms of our instruction. We believe that our vision for literacy here in Milford Public Schools is that students are actually our primary resource. We think that no one program could possibly meet the needs of every single student we have. We think that the best way to help students is really to equip our teachers with high quality curriculum that is in alignment with our district model for high quality instruction. We believe that that curriculum needs to be research aligned, and it needs to make sure that there is embedded professional learning. We are so fortunate tonight because we have a small sampling of instructional coaches who are here to support our teachers on any given Tuesday. So if a teacher comes up and has a concern about literacy, they have 4 instructional coaches in their building who they can talk to about that need, about that student, about whatever it is that the research may be telling them to do with that student. We believe that high quality instruction is really the way that we are going to meet all of our students' needs, and we believe that we are working towards our best practices, again, research aligned practices in literacy instruction. Overall, Milford believes in investing in our teachers. When we talk about a comprehensive literacy approach, we really are talking about 5 pillars of reading. So you'll notice before you are the 5 pillars that as we've defined. So the first one being phonological awareness. This is an area that has been more recently talked about in the last few years. In Milford, we have adopted a program that specifically supports teachers and students in the area of phonological awareness. We also know that phonics is the next step in student learning in the area of reading. In terms of phonics, Milford has implemented a new research-based curriculum that is both based on the current Common Core standards as well as the science of reading. Another pillar of reading, is the fluency. This was the prioritized standard from the state over the last 2 years, so it continues to be a priority for Milford. We know that fluency is a very important part of learning how to read. Vocabulary, when we talk about vocabulary, we're really talking about morphology and talking about points of the pieces of the words and how students are understanding those words. And finally, comprehension. We want to be very clear here in Milford Public Schools. We believe that deep thinking actually can happen in kindergarten. Our youngest learners are our most vivacious learners and are often our deepest thinkers. We just have to give them an opportunity to share what they're thinking. So we believe these 5 pillars of reading should be an integral part of our K-3 programming. As Dr. Fedigan mentioned, we of course are always in service to our model for high quality instruction. Tonight I'd like to draw your attention to the 2 particular areas where we have circled. The first one is intentional planning, formative assessment, and feedback. This particular area is really important when building teacher capacity because of course your learners in front of you look different every year. So it's important for us that we are grounding our teachers in how to use formative assessment and the resources that they have before them to make instructional decisions for any child that comes into their classroom. I also want to draw your attention to the part, the engineer to engineer. As we mentioned before, Milford is very lucky with the board's support to have 4 instructional coaches in each building. 2 of these coaches are very well seasoned and are knowledgeable practitioners in the area of reading. And so at any given time, they are in classrooms supporting teachers with how they are learning best practices in reading and really helping them understand the science of reading as we are now knowing it. I also want to ground us in our change of materials. So in particular, in the intentional planning area, we want to make sure that our resources and our materials are in service to high quality instruction. So we've moved away from graphic organizers and worksheets because we really want to see students doing the work. And we're going to give you some examples tonight of how students are learning and what it looks like in the areas of literacy. We believe in Milford Public Schools. In order to get at this model for high quality instruction, a big piece of it is allowing for voice and choice in our students' everyday life. Some significant shifts we've made in reading. You'll see before you 6 shifts. So this work is grounded in Jan Birkin's work. It's called the 6 Shifts in Reading. And it really talks about 6 moves you can make that will help align you with the science of reading. So the first one, I know it's a little bit hard to read, is rethinking how reading comprehension begins. As I mentioned before, we in Milford Public Schools believe that this starts at kindergarten, probably even at preschool. We know our youngest learners, our preschool learners, have deep thoughts and can share those thoughts. We are recommitting to phonemic awareness. We know that this is a really important area that often we don't talk enough about. People think that students come to school with phonemic awareness. We know that it's an explicit skill that needs to be taught. We are reimagining the way we teach phonics. As you heard before, we have recently realigned our phonics curriculum so that it is based in the science of reading and research-based practices. We are revising our high-frequency word instruction. We're going to talk a little bit about sound walls tonight and how things might look a little bit different than the way we used to think about high-frequency words. We're reinventing the way we use the MSV, the cueing systems. We know that meaning will always be important, but we also want to make sure students are decoding words. And finally, we are reconsidering the text that we look at for beginning readers. Tonight, we're going to highlight just a few of the shifts that we've made and show you some of our very own Milford Public Schools students engaging in this work. So first, I'm going to introduce Nicole Bertula, who is our teacher leader, Pre-K-12 Literacy Support Services.
Hi, thank you. So one of the shifts that Mrs. Morrow talked about is really recommitting to phonemic awareness. Phonemic awareness is the spoken sounds in words. So before we're even looking at the word, being able to think about the sounds, hear the sounds, manipulate the sounds. So here is a quick video of an example of some of the work that is happening in a second grade classroom around this.
O's, O's, A's, J's, E, G. Awesome. Alright, now it's time to isolate that middle or vowel sound we hear.
All right, so this is just a really quick example of a second grade teacher explicitly working with students, using hand motions, and thinking about the different sounds in words. Phonemic awareness is really critically important because it's the foundation before you're actually reading words and making that connection from the sounds to the symbols.
Thank you, Nicole.
Sorry.
Next up, we have Megan Delmonte, who is our instructional coach over at Pumpkin Delight, and she's going to talk a little bit about orthographic mapping.
Thank you. So David Kilpatrick refers to orthographic mapping as the process in which students can store and easily retrieve words. We know that in order for students to really own words, they need to not only be able to read them, but also be able to write them. So one of the high leverage routines that we have implemented in our new phonics curriculum is phonemic graphing. So essentially, the students are using sound boxes and they segment the sounds and words, and then they add the graphing, the letter or letters that go with those sounds. So here's a little video of the students doing that work in a first grade classroom. Let's hold it, please. You're shaking your head no.
It didn't come up.
It's not, there's no flag.
Yeah.
I linked it. Yeah, it's been
It was working before,
yeah.
we definitely tried.
It wasn't working when you tried.
If you go down to the very, very last one.
There we go,
Okay,
maybe that's
Yeah, it's
Yeah, it's coming.
Thinking.
Yeah.
Sorry
There
about
we
that.
go.
Thank you, Megan. The next shift we're going to share with you is all about changing and revisiting high-frequency word walls. And Karen Coyne and Marcia Loput are going to share this, our instructional coaches at Live Oaks. Yeah.
Hello. At Live School, we are making a shift from teacher-centered word walls to student-centered sound walls to support high-frequency word instruction. And this slide highlights some of the differences. We began working with sound walls last year with our first grade team, and we are continuing that work, which includes kindergarten and second grade this year, as well as sharing out with our fellow coaches. Why are we making this shift? Because of the science-based research. In order for students to make the connection between speech and print, we need to explicitly teach students how to hear and articulate the individual sounds and phonemes.
So what is a sound wall? Sound walls consist of phoneme grapheme cards that are posted on the wall, and they are sectioned into vowel sounds and consonant sounds. And using high leverage instructional practices that Meg has referred to are essential for high frequency word instruction. And the sound wall encourages students to analyze words and notice unfamiliar and irregular spelling patterns. For example, when students encounter the word know, K-N-O-W, on a sound wall, they would most likely place that under the sound of n, not the letter K. Because when they are writing and they need to refer to how to spell that word, they are going to be thinking n, and they will find it easier as opposed to the old word walls where it would have been under the letter K, which is confusing for them. The sound wall becomes an instructional tool and student resource to reference throughout the day. So we decided, because we started this last year with first graders, that we would interview our second graders to find out what they had to say about sound walls. And here's what they said. Excuse me, I'll read it for you because it looks kind of small. But if I don't know how to spell words, I look for what I hear. For example, if I'm looking for the word could, I look for the k sound and find it under the stops, says Sarah. Aria told us if we have a tricky word, we could look for any other words or parts of words on the sound wall that sound the same, then we can sound out the word. Jameson informed us that it helps us with spelling, especially with tricky parts. The letter O in of has a heart above it because it isn't the sound of ah. These are hard words.
And we also asked some teachers to give us feedback about the sound walls. And one of our first grade teachers is students have led the conversations around sounds and where to place the words on the sound wall. They are all part of the conversation and owning it. Second grade teacher, placing the words on the sound wall and phoneme graphing mapping have helped improve their spelling. And another grade 1 teacher, the sound wall makes children think more carefully about the sounds they hear in words and the way letters combine to represent those sounds.
So we know another shift that this board has been wonderful about supporting is classroom libraries. Of course, we always want students to have that authentic experience like we look at in the HQI model. So Ms. Sarah Monaco and Elisa Petoniak. Sarah Monaco is our teacher leader for pre-K-5 literacy, and Elisa Petoniak is instructional coach at Pumpkin to Lake.
Okay, good evening. So we wanted to make sure that we thanked you so very much for the opportunity to put all these wonderful texts in the hands of our students and our teachers. And the excitement, not only for the children, with the children, for these new texts, but the teachers are equally as excited to have some new life put into their classroom libraries.
Quite frankly, the kids are beyond thrilled to have new books. They took the agency and the teachers left them to organize the classroom libraries and set them up by genre and determine where books were going to go. But they're really more importantly excited about the fact that they're seeing themselves in books. And the diverse collection that we've been able to accrue so far, it's just been amazing. As they were sorting, kids were already making predictions. I want to read this one first, I want to read this one. They're making suggestions to each other. I just finished this one, you should do it. They've set up anchor charts where you got to read this book. It's great, the characters, you'll love it. So it's just been really wonderful for them to have access to these, and the teachers are excited too, just to have new books and just get an excitement around reading in the classroom. It's been wonderful.
So again, I'd like to thank the instructional team before you tonight. How fortunate are our teachers that this is the experience they get to have on any Tuesday. If they want to know more about phoneme graphing, they have great, amazing resources within their buildings that they can learn about. They don't have to wait for a training. They don't have to wait for anything else. They have this amazing professional learning opportunity at any given moment to help coach them around their students. So we are so appreciative for that support. I also would like to say, the board has been very supportive of classroom libraries and instructional resources. We are so very thankful for those resources because they have brought us back to a love of literacy. So many of you will remember that when I stood before you in 2020, one of my most important pieces of literacy was that students never lose their love of literacy. And I think from our youngest scholars to our students who are here this evening tonight, we want to make sure that that is anchored in all we do, and we are so appreciative that this board is supporting it. Unfortunately, as Dr. Fedigan indicated before, there is some new legislation out that we are a little worried might take us off our path. So many of you have seen that there is new legislation out, and it is called the Right to Read Act. The legislation states that on or before July 1st, each local and regional Board of Education will notify the Literacy, Research, and Reading Center what reading curriculum model or program that they are implementing. So this is a major shift from how the state has done business in the past. Generally, we have had the opportunity to have a conversation like this around what we're doing with curriculum. It has not usually come from the state. So you'll notice that there are some state responses to the legislation. The CSDE developed a Connecticut review process last spring. Each district who wanted to was able to put in a program for review. I say program because they didn't really look at a comprehensive curriculum. So I want to be really clear that Milford believes that one program could not possibly meet all of the amazing things that are happening tonight. You've heard us mention several different resources, but we don't necessarily buy a boxed program and put that in front of our students because we don't believe that's high quality instruction. So you'll notice that the review process was really around programs. And unfortunately, when there were several opportunities for programs, but not a lot of opportunities for curricula, which was a mix of programs. So you'll notice that as the state wanted to find evidence-based, scientifically based, and aligned areas of reading, they adapted a lot from Curate, and they looked at a lot of the information from the Massachusetts State Department of Education. We want to share with you tonight some concerns we have about the legislation and the state's reaction to it. So this is part of the CAPS memo that you received in your packet earlier. So I think one of our biggest concerns, as we mentioned before, is that we don't really believe that one program could possibly meet every student's needs. We really believe, anchoring back to that vision, that we need to equip teachers with the resources and the professional learning in their toolbox to make informed decision. You'll notice that the first bullet point up here talks about the fact that instead of adopting reading curriculas, they really adopted off-the-shelf programming. So there are 5 off-the-shelf programs that were adopted by the state. We'll also notice the second bullet that they are requiring certain instructional methodologies or materials in the area of literacy. So again, as I mentioned before, this is quite a sizable change from the way that we've done business in the past, and I think really important for the board to take note of. Again, I think it's really important to remember that Milford has been so fortunate to have this long-standing visioning for literacy as well as a model for high-quality instruction. Everything that we have done in the area of literacy over the last several years, even within COVID, has been in service to our model for high-quality instruction. We are really concerned that by buying an off-the-shelf program, that wouldn't really align to our district's model for high quality instruction and might be an overreach because the state wouldn't know Milford, our community, or what our learners need. So we have some major concerns about that. Beyond the concerns of the overreach and the off-the-shelf programming, we also have some other financial concerns. So of the 5 programs, we have reached out to all vendors for quotes because again, if this is going to be a state requirement, we want to do our due diligence. Without any professional learning, this stands to be about a $1 million cost, and it would be expected that it goes in July 1 of 2023. We also would need to realign whatever resource we did end up going with to HQI because that is our district model. We have done a substantial amount of work. We're not going away from that district model. So whatever we purchase, we would need to make sure teachers are very clear that HQI is still our district model, and we would need to realign the resource to make sure it fits. We would also need to realign our classroom libraries. Our current classroom libraries have a strong research backing. When we chose to purchase them, we used a vendor who had a strong research, but also tied to our current programming. There is a concern that if we were to go with a new programming, those classroom libraries may no longer align. The mentor text would not align. We would need to relook at that. We also would have an impact to our established cycle of curriculum. As you've seen before, we have a very specific laid out curriculum calendar as well as a curriculum revision cycle. This would have a major impact on that as we would have to overhaul curriculum again in the areas of K through 3, and unfortunately we've just done that in the last 2 years. We are able to apply for a waiver. You'll notice that there, and I apologize because I know this is small, there are a couple of things I'd like you to note. The first statute says that a reading curriculum or model program for grades pre-kindergarten, to grade 3 has been reviewed and recommended. We could just implement that. We could turnkey it and we could flip it over. Again, the concern being that that does not align with our students here in Milford Public Schools, certainly not with our district model for high quality instruction or the vision we have for literacy. I also would mention that the statute says pre-kindergarten. At this point, the state has not approved any program for pre-kindergarten. They have not found one that they agree fits, so it could be that the board goes through, we adopt a program for K3, and then in a year from now we have to adopt something else for pre-K. So we have some concerns about that as well. The second part is that you can request a waiver to implement a reading curriculum model or program other than a model reviewed. So this is something that we think Milford would likely do. So as we mentioned before, everything that Milford is doing right now is grounded in the science of reading. We are grounded in research-based practices that are there to support our teachers. So what does this mean for us? Milford is staying the course. We are not looking to uproot our teachers. We believe in teacher capacity. We believe that knowledgeable teachers and teachers who are given on-site, embedded professional learning through the area of a coach are the best way to help students who have either reading difficulties or who are accelerating that reading. We believe instructional coaching is a prime example of embedded on-the-job support. We believe in 2019, when we stood before this board, we outlined a comprehensive literacy program and we are staying that course. Our values have not changed. What we believe is a comprehensive literacy program and research-based has not changed. We believe our continued work in the area of curriculum and instruction will help to support best practices in literacy. And finally, we will apply for a waiver. We will use all of the resources and research that we have used to develop our curriculum to create a robust, comprehensive literacy curriculum for all of our students. Thank you very much for your time tonight.
Thank you. Do you have more, or are you ready for questions?
Happy to take questions.
Ms. Petrosky.
So I think from a board standpoint, we've all bought into HQI as the way to go, and I think we've all invested time, effort, and you've all made the case for that. I'm just asking what can the board do to help support getting a waiver?
Well, we are having multiple conversations with the State Department of Education about the need to ensure that districts like ourselves can apply for the waiver, but it also be approved for what we're currently doing. So in the state of Connecticut, there are only 11 districts that currently use one of the 5 programs that were adopted by the State Department. So this is an impact on more than just Milford. And there is question from many about us, and when I speak about us, it's mostly superintendents in our association. We have questions as to the research backing on some of the programs actually, and how effective they are outside of specific settings and specific demographics of students. And those, in my opinion, don't necessarily align with the types of students we have in Milford. And certainly, a school system like Milford that has a coherent instructional model for high quality instruction and a clear and coherent guaranteed curriculum and a scaffold of assessments. So at this time, we have seen some movement from the state in where there was a very strict, narrow waiver process, which has widened a bit. There are still some concerns as to whether districts like Milford or any others that don't use the program could actually attain the waiver. The waiver is due in December and we don't have it yet. So we're going to have to do some speedy overnight work if there isn't an extension on that. And now to better directly answer your question, Ms. Petrosky, I think if it gets to the point, this board could make a statement to the State Board of Education, because if you did read the materials that we sent to you, we believe it's a gross overreach and misinterpretation of legislation. If you were to take a look at what's in the legislation, it's clear that they're talking about curriculum and/or programs, and those are not synonymous. A curriculum is not synonymous with a off-the-shelf boxed program. And at my deepest core, when I first came to Milford, I believe I've shared out loud numerous times that we don't believe in buying something from a vendor from California and saying, voila, here's the answer. And that's exactly what the state is requiring us to do, is to purchase one of 5 vendored programs and say, implement this wholesale. So I think we'll have more answers as we go into our budget season. We will not be budgeting for this. I will tell you now, we're not putting an additional $1 million in because I believe that we need to stay the course. Like this slide says, we are in a good place. We have solid curriculum, an effective instructional model. Look at all the capacity and professional learning that we have put into supporting teachers and students. So I will signal to the board if we need some action on your part. It just depends on how the State Department responds at this time. And we're not the only district grappling with this. If you are reading, there are some other districts in the news right now who are having this exact dialogue in public.
Can I just ask for clarification on something you just said? Because I had a question about the time frame for the waiver. So you said the waiver is due in December and we don't have it yet, meaning
we have
This
to
is
apply.
the current state website still looks like this. So this is where we would go on the CSDE to apply for the waiver, and this is still what's there. I believe that the first step in December is saying whether or not you're going to apply for a waiver or whether or not you're going to pick a program. The second step, I think, is in February to submit the waiver.
Okay.
But either way, it's still a very tight timeline, which is also one of our concerns. Certainly, we want to do our due diligence. We would never want to adopt something without really understanding what we're taking on. And the programs were just approved end of September, so it's a very tight timeline to make any sort of informed decision. And as Dr. Kataya said, we really do believe that what we're doing here in Milford is what's best for students, and so we believe it's best to stay the course and apply for the waiver.
And if we were interested in a program, I'm thinking about 2 programs that we're actually piloting at the middle school level in mathematics right now. We're testing both out for the year. And we're collecting our data, getting feedback from our teachers, and we'll have a decision made by June. So to think that we have a choice of 5, and we have to decide by this winter, budget for it this winter, and have no opportunity to test any of them out. We like a structure of piloting and getting feedback from our teachers. The timeline in itself, let's just say we were slightly interested in this. I believe it's professionally irresponsible to commit $1 million to a program that we haven't very well studied. And I would expect the board to hold me accountable for, if we're going to purchase a reading program that's going to affect our entire elementary student body, that we would do our due diligence in researching it. But instead, in September 29th, we were sent a memo saying, these are your 5 choices. Let us know what you're going to do as of July 1st. I believe that's professionally irresponsible.
There's also some question about even alignment to the standards that are established. So we have concerns around the research backing of these really, I think we call them products, really, right? Products and programs, and their fit to our model for HQI. And again, also, their appropriateness for our student body.
Mr. DeYoung?
Thank you. So really the issue at hand is not the legislation per se, but the implementation of the legislation from the State Department of Education. Is that how I'm understanding it?
That's how we interpret it as an association of superintendents.
Okay.
The State Department would disagree with that statement. They have disagreed.
Sure. Is this in Connecticut unprecedented for this type of thing to happen? It seems.
This is the
I would
heaviest
agree with you
hand
that
out of the
it's an
State
overreach.
Department that I have seen.
Okay. So there's no other precedent that we could go back to and say, look at what they did here and how to battle back, so to speak, from a district level.
In my almost 20 years in the state of Connecticut, when it comes to teaching and learning, it has primarily been, these are the standards that you should align your curriculum to. If you are an alliance district or a district in need, then there are many more requirements that would apply to districts such as that. But outside of that, this is the heavy, and No Child Left Behind, which was federal.
Right.
On if you're failing and behind, you must provide school choice, after school opportunities, all that. That was very, very heavy-handed, but that was a federal piece. This is not something I've seen the State Department come and do to districts like Milford and say, you must adopt this.
And we do know there are about 29 other states who have adopted some sort of right to read legislation. Of those 29, I believe only 5 or 6 have actually mandated specific programs. So there are very few states that have actually gone this far to mandate the programs. Most of the states, of the 29, have implemented some sort of right to read legislation based on the science of reading, but not have gone so far as to say these are the programs you should use. The other point to note too that the board should be aware of is as Dr. Fedigan and Dr. Kataya said, we're not sure about the alignment to the Common Core, which we've been assured is not going anywhere. So our current programming, our current curriculum does align to the Common Core. And we also have heard that in 2 more years, the state is going to put out a model K2 ELA curriculum. So again, that could be another impact on our teachers, again, asking them for a lot of change in a short amount of time. So we have very concerns about the timeline, concerns about what's to come. And again, as Dr. Kataya said, the rushed part of making a decision quickly when the Common Core is not going anywhere, and now there's going to be more information coming about a K2 model curricula.
I think the spirit of this legislation is to ensure that the science of reading is adopted and being taught. The shifts you saw, the slide of all the shifts, ensures that we are following the science of reading. The science of reading is embedded in our curriculum. It's embedded in our structural practices. That is, I believe, at the heart of that legislation. It's not to approve at a state level specific programs for districts to adopt.
At the risk of sounding not too intelligent, where does the science of reading come from?
From research.
Okay.
We could provide research backing that.
All right.
Ms. McDonough Souza.
Thank you. So I completely agree with everything you all are saying, that this legislation and just picking a program and the timeline and everything is, like what you said, professionally irresponsible. And I'm totally in support of the waiver. Having said that, though, I guess I'm a little concerned because we as a board are tasked with following the law. So even if you disagree with what the law says, you know, what if the waiver, and this waiver language is super broad, you know, what if we don't get the waiver? Then we're just going to hope that this legislation, you know, falls apart, and it sounds like all the superintendents are on board, and that, you know, the waiver is easy to get. Like, it seems like we're putting a lot of our eggs in this basket that we're not going to be held to having to comply with this law, and we're gonna get the waiver, and that seems risky to me. So I'm just a little concerned.
So I wouldn't say we've put all our eggs in that basket. So Dr. Fedigan and I have been doing our due diligence in the background. So we have gone to every opportunity that the state has offered around the programs that they are putting forward. So we spent days in front of the programs. We then took a team to CES of instructional coaches to get their feedback on it. So if our hand is forced, we have been looking at them, which is where we got the $11,000 a classroom number. So we have been doing our due diligence in the background to think about, if we were forced, what might we be able to make align to HQI? We've been thinking about that. But our biggest, not our biggest concern, obviously the overreach and the off-the-shelf programming are huge concerns, and the financial impact is another one. So I think asking any district to spend $1 million in 6 months when they haven't had time to vet the program, I think is our biggest concern. So in the background, we have been looking at the programs, we have been meeting with vendors, we have been hearing from them, but that's where we've heard that we have some major concerns about the research. So when we were meeting with the vendors, we asked specifically about their research around dyslexia, and it was very vague, and most of them didn't have any. So that's why we are saying we have major concerns, even if our hand is forced, to implement any of these that would really help our students.
So what about the fact that we're not accounting for this extra $1 million in the budget? Like, where does that, what are we gonna do if we have to implement it and we don't have any room in the budget to implement it?
We're gonna be one of 169 towns likely, or whatever the number is, right? But, and it would be my plea to the state that we get an extension.
Yeah.
So it just, even with new curriculum, we would never flip the switch on July 1. We've eased our rollout over the last couple of years with new curriculum. Like, there's no other area where on July 1 we automatically flip a switch and say all middle school math teachers will now do Desmos. Whoa! Like that, we don't approach improvement that way. There is a build-up throughout a school year. There are professional learning days. There are coaches that push in. We pull out and go observe other teachers. We do summer so I believe that the timeline of rollout will have to be slowed through just working with the state and saying, okay, if you're not going to approve our waiver, we'll need now time to build a timeline to implement. So I believe it would just be a working with.
Okay. And there is, I believe, a provision for if a district can't meet the financial commitment within the waiver to be able to appeal to the state for that. But we do have an unwavering commitment, to use the word waiver, to our district model for high quality instruction. So regardless of how our hand is forced, that will remain our steadfast commitment to improving teaching and learning experiences to really strengthen a strong core of foundational literacy in our primary grades.
To be clear, I fully support all
I
this.
believe it's interpretation of that law, so I would imagine that there would be other entities that engage in this dialogue before it's over.
Right.
I think CEA is part of a conversation around this. CAVE has engaged in a conversation around this. So it's just more people are at the table, and we're talking to our representatives and legislators. So if one thing as the board can do is talk to our elected officials about this as well.
Mr. Pelliccetti?
First off, what was put out here tonight is truly solid instruction. Kudos, it's great work. My first question is, what are the repercussions from the state if a program is not implemented? And would you say that if Milford suddenly had to implement a new program July 1, would that be without the proper professional development, unwrapping the whole package and everything? Would that be detrimental to the children's learning?
So, I don't wanna be misunderstood, I'm not gonna be a superintendent that breaks the law.
Not asking.
There's better ways to get in jail, but, outside of breaking the Right to Read Act. Our signaling to you tonight is that we are not in favor of this. That we believe, actually to use your word, it is detrimental. If we were to just select one of the 5, bake $1 million into the next year's budget, and say, we will now implement July 1st. I believe that will be more harmful to our young people, and I'm always thinking about our teachers. We are now doing a complete 180 on everything we've been doing the last 4 years. Now, how grossly unfair is that to both the adult learners and the little people learners? So, I am not looking to bring reproach or harm by breaking any laws, but I'm signaling that we are going to apply for a waiver and we're going to do everything possible to stay our course. Because we believe we are meeting, actually, the right to read legislation. We're meeting it. That's my whole point. I don't need to buy a box. We're doing it. And I want the State Department to give us a chance to show them that we are. So, that's our first strategy. If we are told absolutely no way, we're buying a box, and we will do the best we can with it. And we would need time to figure out what that means for Milford.
Ms. Doyle?
Thank you. Wanted to clarify, there is no money attached from the government, the state government, to support this legislation.
So the state has said that there is the latest is that there is some money, but as Dr. Kataya is stating, there are so many districts that are in the same position that we are. Even the 11 that you spoke of before, many of them are using these as supplemental programs, so they are not the core resources. So I don't know how they would possibly fund all of the districts in Connecticut or the majority.
Well, I have the bill open in front of me, and there is an ability to insufficient resources and things like that, and how do we allocate and account for the fact that we spent 4 years and millions of dollars in here in that sense. So thanks for sharing that. And then I have two questions that are kind of related, but so each individual classroom library is a different library, or are they same across each school or classroom? How many books are in each one?
So I would have to get back to you on the exact number of books.
Fine.
But what we did last spring is we actually went through a recycling process. So many of our books were old and outdated and really not visually appealing or appropriate for students. Not inappropriate, but they just were old and not visually appealing. So we weeded our classroom libraries, and then those teachers who weeded most significantly, we replenished. There were some standard libraries that we got across the grade levels. So in 3 through 5, we aligned. That's why I said with the change in curriculum, we would have to relook at the classroom library. So in grade 3 through 5, I'm thinking of a couple. For every 3rd grade teacher, we bought a bookshelf on character studies, which goes with their first unit. We bought in grade 4 extreme weather, which also goes with their upcoming nonfiction unit. In grade 5, we bought a shelf of books called Argument and Advocacy, which also goes with one of their units. So we specifically tailored what resources we were giving to meet the needs of what was coming up in the curriculum. So I can't tell you offhand exactly how many books that was, but I can certainly get back to you with that. And then certainly some of our teachers, during COVID, there were some materials that were lost on the trailers, or some teachers who had started and never got a class classroom libraries, so we made sure we outfitted those too. So I would say to Mrs. Petoniak's point, I mean, you walk in now, if you have the chance to walk through the way the kids have organized the libraries and the way they've taken ownership of it, it's so exciting. We have, you know, a little girl at one of our elementary schools, she goes, look it, this character looks just like me on the book. So, you know, and our teachers are so funny, they are like, there's nothing better than the smell of new books. So it's been really well received. And our libraries are all research based. So when we looked at different vendors, we looked at which vendors have really done their research on classroom libraries. We wanted to make sure they were culturally responsive. We wanted to make sure they had diverse characters, but we also wanted to make sure they were a variety of reading complexities. So as we're talking about text complexity, we wanted to make sure students had access to all different levels of text, and not, again, in the terms of a leveled library, but more genre and author specific.
Great. So this kind of piggybacks on when we went and did the school tours and we walked through the libraries. How does the increased classroom libraries affect the libraries within the in the schools separately? Is there a focus on nonfiction in the classroom, fiction, like how does that kind of?
That's a great question. So Mrs. Paris and I work really closely together. She has a similar weeding process. We actually looked at the process together when we were engaging in it with classroom libraries. So we don't restrict books in the classroom library. So we wouldn't say, well, if you're checking out nonfiction in the library, then you should only have fiction in the classroom library. We don't want to ever restrict because we know certain kids will gravitate towards one genre more than the other. I know Mrs. Paris is similar in the fact that she's looking at what texts are most engaging. There is a process in the libraries. I know that she is able to see which books are checked out the most, and so she uses that process to help with weeding as well. But just because we have more books in the classroom libraries doesn't mean we're going to restrict book usage in the school libraries. We really want to make sure that children have lots of opportunities for reading, and we know that the school libraries are great opportunities for it to go home as well. So classroom library books can go home as well as school library books. We really want to make sure children have a wide variety of text to, again, get back to that joy of reading. You know, I was with somebody today and we were talking about a new series that's up and coming, and we want to make sure those are in the hands of kids, so that way they are, when they have to grapple with something that's tough or when they have to learn about decoding, they have a book that they already love and they can see themselves in.
Great. As a student who read lots of books in elementary school and everything else, I appreciate that. Last question I have is kind of, Mr. Richitelli might have the answer for it. Looking at the agenda later, because I just want to just kind of tie in this conversation about what we're spending already in terms of that sense. And later, there's a spend for $32,000 on literacy footprints guided reading across the school district. So would this be a type of program that we're implementing within the schools and adapting to meet the curriculum goals essentially and that right to read?
So the literacy program though.
Not a program, it would be a
It's a resource. Yeah, so Literacy Footprints is a digital resource. We've used it in the past, especially the last 2 years when kids were back and forth and we had quarantine and kids didn't always have access to text at home. We use this as a homeschool connection. Going forward, we're also starting to use those as an assessment platform. So it is one of the assessments that we're using, so that will be what you see the cost going forward.
And so the programs that are purposely, the 5 that are allocated now and approved by the state, don't have those type of components within them?
So they may have some of the components, they don't have all of the components that we currently have. So I'll give you an example right now. One of the resources we use for phonological awareness is Heggerty. Most of the programs that are approved have nothing in them or very limited resources for phonological awareness, so likely we would have to purchase something to fill that void. In terms of the area of assessment, anything that we would buy from assessment would not be part of that program, it would be in addition to.
Okay, and so, sorry, last question I have, is how does this align to our new testing of all the names are kind of, all the acronyms are floating in my head, but in 4th grade we're talking K through Q3 here predominantly, and 4th grade is the first year that we have the new testing of the, Grade 3 is the new testing. The SBA testing with that. And so how do these all kind of tie in together to meet those SBA requirements as we have come out of the pandemic and there's a lot of things in the news of all the loss that's occurred and going from there?
So one of the biggest areas that we're seeing a need for across the state is foundational reading, which is why we made the shifts we made this summer to increase our teacher capacity and teacher resources around phonemic awareness and also in the areas of phonics. The shifts that we've made tonight are really in support of foundational reading. When we shore up those students' foundational reading in K through 3, we hope that that will be an area we'll continue to grow. But we also think that including the classroom libraries in that conversation is really important because we're starting to shift the conversation from leveling students to really talking about text complexity. When students are able to decode multisyllabic words, usually by the end of grade 3, they can decode any multisyllabic words. That's why the importance of vocabulary and morphology is there, and that's why we want to make sure they have really rich texts to engage in. We also want to make sure we're starting, again, with our youngest scholars around comprehension. We want to make sure they're thinking deeply about text, they're analyzing text, they're comparing and contrasting, and they're engaging in all those higher order thinking skills that will really help them as they get ready for, the state assessments.
Great, thank you.
Other questions from board members? Ms. Wolf-Boynton?
I guess it's more of a comment than a question, but after reading the legislation and reading both commentary about it and testimony that was given and seeing the list of co-sponsors of the bill, I definitely understand the intent of this legislation, and I am sure it is very much needed in many communities. But also I'd like to reiterate, what Ms. Petrowski said, that I think that we as a board should be there for you to work with our legislators. I noticed that the majority of our legislators in Milford were not co-sponsors of this bill. There was probably a mindset behind that. Maybe not, maybe I'm jumping to conclusions. But I think that we should be supporting because this idea of a cookie cutter just doesn't work.
And especially as Dr. Kataya said, we have invested so much in our teachers. We really believe in our teachers here in Milford. We believe that they have the instructional capacity to meet students' needs. We believe that we've given them the amazing support of instructional coaches. We want to equip them to make decisions, not equip them to read from a script or anything like that. We believe in our teachers here in Milford.
This whole point, we have crafted some talking points to share with legislators. I'll be meeting with Ms. Glennon tomorrow night. I almost forgot your name. I could share those with her and see how she deems them appropriate.
Yeah, that would be great.
Okay. Mr. Dion?
Thank you. I just had a quick follow-up on the classroom libraries. My understanding is that up until this past year, we hadn't refreshed the classroom libraries in quite some time. What is our plan moving forward to make sure that that doesn't happen again?
That's a great question. So as I said, I'm working with Mrs. Paris around a weeding and acquiring policy, and we're thinking about what that looks like as we go forward, and we're both thinking about budgeting similarly going forward so that we can continuously replenish and it doesn't become a one-time fee.
Okay, that's great. Thank you.
Any other questions before we move on? This has been a great discussion. Okay, I'm sure we'll hear more about this.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much for the
Thanks,
wonderful
everybody.
presentation.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, team.
This time we can move on with policies?
Yes.
So board members, you had opportunity to read through 3 policies, so we are asking you to consider approval of those policies. 42, 12, 42. Let me just get to my notes.
I think Ms. Petrowski had a couple of housekeeping items in these policies. I sent them to you this week.
I did, not that one.
On this one, I think there's just a change in the first paragraph in the blue text.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, do you have a motion, Ms. Petrowski?
Make a motion that the Milford Board of Education approves Board Policy 4212.42, drug and alcohol testing for school bus drivers as presented.
Is there a second?
A second.
Seconded by Mr. Fowler. Is there any discussion? Okay, seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay.
Next policy before you is 5141.4, reporting of child abuse, neglect, and sexual assault. I understand that there are some friendly amendments to be made.
Ms. Petrowski?
Yeah, I had, did somebody make the motion first?
No, tell us what the change is. This
So-
was something that was discussed during the.
I'm sorry, yes, during last meeting, the second paragraph under, the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7th line, where it says, is placed in imminent danger of serious harm or has been sexually abused by a school employee. I think that's the second instance of the by a school employee we were going to strike.
Right, so, we checked with council on this instance, and council is, suggesting we leave it in because we wanna make it clear that even a school employee is responsible to report potential imminent harm or danger if they believe there is a school employee at the hand of that. So that is to be explicit, that it doesn't matter who might be perpetrating there. That is an area where that also falls under their responsibility to call and report that. And you note that there is an or there, so it includes that as well.
Say that again, there's a what there?
Or has been sexually abused by a school employee. So it is included in the list of potential infractions that a employee would be responsible for reporting.
Okay, because I got the first sentence saying all school employees would cover that. To me, when I read that sentence, it says, or has been sexually abused by a school employee. So that means has been sexually abused by somebody else doesn't count. And that's where the confusion is for me. I mean, the first sentence says district requires all school employees and other mandated reporters who have a reasonable cause to suspect or believe that a child has been abused, neglected, etc., or injury which is at variance with the history given of such injury is placed in imminent danger or serious harm or has been sexually abused by a school employee. It just reads to me that the only instance of when somebody understands a child has been sexually abused is if they've been sexually abused by a school employee.
I don't read it that way.
I think that's how we read it in the first paragraph as well. That's, I mean, maybe we can change that so it doesn't, it certainly sounds that way to me, maybe I'm the only one.
It sounded that way to me as well.
I'm happy to accept the friendly amendment, but or table it and have council be here next time we talk about it.
So could we say is placed in imminent danger of serious harm or has been sexually abused by a school employee or other person?
What about taking, don't mind my like nodding here, I can't see. Take out or has been sexually abused to report such this, and then this applies also to situations where a child may have been sexually abused by a school employee. Add the second sentence that encompasses that as well, so that they're addition to versus kind of reading as I read as Ms. Petrowski and Ms.
I think that's
I
redundant.
feel like we're all reading this as someone has been abused by a school employee.
Yeah, that would make sense.
And I think that's the confusion.
Did other board members read it that way?
Yeah, so what is the intent? It's not just abuse by a school employee, it's abuse by anyone that needs to be reported, right?
Including a school
Yeah,
employee. Including a school employee.
Including.
So what if we
So
say
maybe it's
anyone?
the word including.
Just add the
there.
word, yeah, or has been sexually abused by anyone, including a school employee.
Right, because why would the first paragraph, why would that by an employee be X'd out and it not be X'd out in the second paragraph? Is that your point, Ms. Petrowski?
Yeah, that was my question. Not as clearly stated as you did, but thank you.
I think that there's just the intro paragraph, that this is the belief and statement of the board, and then the second paragraph goes into more specificity.
Right.
I think is how the flow and why it could potentially be struck in one and not the other.
Right.
So if your intent of the second paragraph just give a little bit more specificity on the role of the district as different than the first paragraph as the intent, the belief of the board, I would be open to by anyone including.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's read aloud.
That works.
So Ms. Griffin can capture the amendment, please. Or has been sexually abused by anyone, including a school employee.
Including but not limited to? Or
But
is that
not
too
limited to.
Yes.
That is even more explicit.
Yeah.
Got it.
Is that more clear for board members?
That helps for me.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ms.
Is
Petrosky.
there anything else in this policy?
I did have one other piece in this policy, which is, under reporting procedures, the second paragraph. In the notes, it says mandated reporters reporting electronically when they reasonably suspect that a child has been abused, neglected in a non-emergent situation. Do we wanna also add neglected or placed at risk of harm and just get rid of imminent? Or was the case to just say, oh, forget about the placed at risk of harm?
We felt like we were, it's just all synonymous there, right? Imminent harm, non-emergent. So are you suggesting to reintroduce the struck portion there?
All of the struck words except for imminent.
I'm happy to do that.
Okay.
I think we could, it doesn't take away or change the intent of the policy. So we're going to, now it reads, when they reasonably suspect that a child has been abused, neglected, or placed at risk in a non-emergent situation.
A risk of harm. Risk of harm.
Risk of harm. Of harm, thank you. Is that good?
Yeah, thank you.
We okay with that, board? Okay. All right, do we have a motion, Ms. Petrosky, as amended?
Motion that the Milford Board of Education approves board policy 4212, wrong one, 5414. Motion that the Board of Education approves board policy 5141.4, reporting of child abuse, neglect, and sexual assault as amended.
Is there a second?
A second.
Second by Mr. Fowler. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you, and the final, policy before you is 5145.511, Sexual Abuse Prevention and Education Program. And you will note on the third page of 4 in blue text, modifications made since our first read.
Ms. Petrosky, was this, you had one other friendly reminder, friendly change to this as well, right? It's on page 20, page 104.
Page 104, and under program, the first paragraph, if we put district next to the Milford Public Schools in parentheses.
Right. Which is our normal practice. Do you have a motion, Ms. Petrosky?
Make a motion that the Milford Board of Education approves board policy 5145.511, sexual abuse prevention and education program as amended.
Is there a second?
A second.
Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you, board members. Now we're moving on to the next part of the superintendent's report. I'm happy to share with you that we have Mr. Kasna, who will be sharing an update to our Human Resources Department. We have been diligently working on reviewing the department with a consultant from CES, Esther Bobowick, who's here with us this evening. And I'm happy to turn things over to Ms. Capazza.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. Most of you know me, Wendy Capazza, Director of Human Resources. Nice to meet you. And I would like to introduce to you Esther Bobowick, who is a consultant with us, working with us from CES, which is Cooperative Educational Services in Trumbull. Okay, so we are here to speak to you tonight about a reinvented approach to the work of an HR department in a public school setting. How things have changed and how we need to address these changes and challenges. So first, let's talk about who we are and your perception of an HR department. Let's see if that works. There you go. So when you think of a human resources department, what words or terms come to your mind? You can see some of these words on the screen. Words such as advice, labor laws, recruitment, selection, unemployment, and I don't see it here, but paperwork is a big one that comes to my mind. So anyone who's applied for a job recently, you know all that paperwork is electronic, but it still exists. HR departments do a lot, both here and in other organizations around the world. But in the education world, things have shifted, they have changed. So we need to address these challenges and change too in order to move forward. And this is what we're here to talk to you about tonight. So you're all familiar with this graphic, you've seen it a number of times, but this graphic truly does say it all. All we do rests on these three anchor components: the vision of the learner, the model for high quality instruction, and the relationship framework. So HR is about all of these things, the VOL, the HQI, and the DRF. We have always been partners in the work and are committed to this. But this vision can't happen without high quality staff, as mentioned in the last presentation, right? We're always interested in high quality staff. So in addition to this, we see in the future the need to create a vision of the teacher or the educator. And we believe that this will align to the goals of the district and help enhance all of our other anchor components. But before we talk about future plans, let's look at another familiar graphic. The budget. This is a big one coming up soon. This illustrates that over 77% of our budget is staffing or people. Tonight we're here to talk to you about the 77% and why it's important for us to focus on that 77%. Our people are how we reach our goals, how we implement HQI, the vision of the learner, and the district relationship framework. So we asked ourselves, what is happening in the world of HR and talent, both nationally and locally? And beyond recruiting and hiring, how can we make a better impact on our students? How can we bridge this gap between hiring and all of our district goals? So too often, the work of HR departments are not entirely connected to student performance outcomes and school improvement. And we know that here in Milford, we can do a little bit better in this area. HR needs more exposure and more overlap with the teaching and learning world. For example, I try to think of a good example in this area, HQI. So I've been to the HQI trainings over the summer, but nobody else in the HR department has. So I have somebody doing recruitment of teachers who's never actually seen HQI, what it's all about, what it looks like, and we need to change that. We have seen a drastic decrease in the pool of people applying for teaching positions, that's no secret. Although we have been skillful and lucky in this area, Milford is starting to see the effects of this decrease, and that's just going to continue. We're going to continue to feel that as time goes on. Teacher retention is an even greater priority than ever before. As with this decrease in applicants comes, we would like to think that it comes with different approaches to recruiting. Unfortunately, one of them involves, I'm trying to think of a nice way to say this, how did we decide this? Proactively tapping people on the shoulder and having them apply to their district.
Versus stealing.
Correct. So maybe we have staff members that are content and are fine and happy until someone taps them and it gets them to really think, about other opportunities elsewhere for them. So, and as you know, all students deserve the highest quality of teachers to teach them. This is our number one goal.
as always, to ensure that each and every student has both outstanding teachers and leaders in their building. And so, what are we going to do to address these challenges? What are we going to do to better support the 77%, to support the 1,300 staff members and 485 classrooms? Well, here's how we started. We decided to do our own research on the issues. Esther and I started working together, I think in early 2022, maybe even late 2021. We first pulled together an advisory committee made up of 5 administrators throughout the district. We studied a highly regarded text, one that provided much research in this area. This was very helpful, and Esther even communicated with the author of this text, and she offered even more of her services down the line for us, which is really nice. From there, we developed and sent out a survey to identify district gaps and needs. And we collaborated on numerous occasions with the entire HR department about the work to engage them in forward thinking about these future changes that we wanted to make. We then selected a new department name that better reflected our new vision. It will be unveiled next, and no one has heard this before except for the HR department. And then we also created a mission statement to define what we are all about and how we want to evolve. So first, our new name. Here we go. The Office of Talent Management and Development. You may have heard the term talent management before. It's a pretty common one. I come from the world 30 some odd years ago where we started as personnel and then we evolved to human resources, and slowly but surely people are moving towards talent management, human capital, things of that nature. Excuse me, take a breath. So management reflects our work in recruitment and hiring and all other work in the support of our various employee groups. And development, we felt, was a great way to add reflecting the growth opportunities that we can see in the future and also being responsive to staff and district needs and goals. Okay.
Don't forget the acronyms.
Oh, yes, and TMD for short, because you know we all love acronyms, right? You have to add it to the list, right? Thank you. So our mission statement, this is what we came up with. It was a group effort between the HR department, Esther, myself, and our advisory committee. In our effort to recruit and retain the highest quality talent for our students, we believe that people must feel valued and respected so that they can be effective and influential. We believe it is important to be responsive to staff needs and provide growth opportunities for district talent in order to fully attain the vision of the learner for all students. So that's our mission statement. This is who we are and who we want to become. This is our stronger future, because if we want to attain the vision of the learner, if we want HQI in all 485 classrooms, and if we want a relationship-oriented culture, this is our mission. Robust talent management goes further than traditional human resources functions, some of those words that we saw on the first screen, by strategically managing, recruiting, staffing, and developing talented people to support and advance the district goals. So with this mission, you can imagine comes challenges. Unfortunately, we'll talk a lot about these challenges. We'll be on the slide for a while. So we've identified many challenges of the future workforce and what we might need to do. But we've identified 3 of them that rise to the top as more immediate challenges. First, in the area of talent acquisition, recruiting and hiring does need to be expanded to a multi-pronged approach. While we still feel that we need the traditional approach of online recruiting and interviewing and job fairs, we think that we need to expand to some non-traditional approaches. Such approaches might include creating clubs at the high school for future teachers to get them involved, and we're trying to get more people in the pipeline here, and grow your own programs such as training paras who want to become teachers and get certified in teaching. And we would do that in partnership with higher ed. And as you know, there's a lot of higher ed around here to work with, and we're grateful for that. The national teacher shortage is real and has districts scrambling. The lack of classroom teachers has been called a 5-alarm crisis. The flow of new teachers through this pipeline that I mentioned is actually slowed down to a trickle, which is unfortunate. According to a 2022 report by the American Association of Colleges for Teacher Education, between 2008 and 2019, so an 11-year span, the number of students completing traditional teacher prep programs in the US dropped by more than 33%. So over that short amount of time, 33% less students are going into teaching for many different reasons, as you can imagine. We have heard firsthand from our local universities, from Southern, Fairfield, UConn, Sacred Heart. They all have the same message. They're getting a fraction of the number of students coming into these programs than they ever did in the past. So although candidates come to us wanting to work in Milford, we talked a little bit about that, and us have done a great job in attracting and hiring people, we know that we can't sustain this. We know that at some point we will not be immune to this shortage. So we also know we need to be more proactive in this area if we are to continue to get the best talent that we can possibly get in front of our students. Teacher retention, that's number 2. Once securing and inducting amazing talent, how do we keep them here? How do we get them to want to stay both in Milford and in the profession? We have heard of the burnout, of people not feeling valued, of people not feeling like we're utilizing to their greatest potential. The research shows that 17, this is an unfortunate statistic, but research shows that 17% of all teachers leave the profession within the first 5 years of their career, which seems pretty insane to me. So we've seen that here, unfortunately. We've also seen the relatively new phenomenon of teachers leaving or retiring mid-year, right? People used to wait till June, and over the past, 5 to 8 years maybe, we've seen people just saying, they hit their number and they're out. So another study from February 2022, so pretty recently, showed that 55% of all educators throughout the country plan to retire or leave the profession earlier than they expected to. This is up from 37% of all educators back in August of 2021. So it's an 18% increase over only 6 months. Again, some of that's probably from the pandemic, but you see a lot of different reasons why people are getting burnt out. So Esther and I, in some of our research, came across Facebook groups. One in particular called Teachers in Transition, where teachers talk about what other careers they can do instead of teaching, how they can translate those skills into something different, how they can get out, and what their frustrations are. So we joined the group just to kind of get the inside scoop. And by the way, this is another unfortunate number. There are 14,000 members nationwide in this one Facebook group. So it's not encouraging.
They had to close it at 14,000 because they couldn't keep up with all the posts.
Yeah. So as we talked about, there's a number of reasons why people leave, but if we can better understand these reasons, better engage, better develop, better recognize, and better create more paths for growth within our own district, we would hope to increase our retention here. And lastly, diverse workforce. As you know, this has been a struggle over the years, but again, a struggle that's been exaggerated and amplified due to the aforementioned teacher shortage. But we need to create a more diversified staff here in Milford. We're gonna have a goal to have a staff that better mirrors our student population in terms of racial, ethnic, cultural, and linguistic similarities. Because it's a diverse community, and we need to catch up to that. Okay, next slide. So we're done with slide number 10. Thank you. Thank you very much. So based on these challenges and our vision for the future, we need to have TMD, Office of Talent Management and Development, focus on the entire life cycle of the employee, from recruitment to retirement, ideally all here in Milford. So everything we do will fit into one of these 3 categories: acquisition, development, and retention. And you can see the little subcategories is there as well. So this will help us organize our work going forward, we feel. And hopefully you'll see this graphic again in the future. Okay. As a result, we will need to not only identify our shifts in practice, but also what we're doing, we need to look at the roles and responsibilities of our current staff members and make some shifts. And I've already begun to kind of map out some of these shifts. And while not yet defined, we may also need to consider adding resources and our own TMD staff talent in order to attain our mission, our new mission. So this is how we will transition from a transactional department, I'm sure you've heard that before, paperwork, to a transformational service provider and partner. And lastly, since data shows that educators, both teachers and administrators, have the absolute largest impact on student outcomes compared to all other factors, it would make sense that we would need to effectively attract, hire, induct, develop, grow, motivate, retain, and appreciate our greatest assets, which are our people, the 77%. It would also make sense to align our new mission, strengthen the overlap, and bridge the gap to the teaching and learning departments. This partnership has always been there, but it will be strengthened and more evident in our recruitment, development, and retention efforts under this new model. The urgency to engage in this work is here now. We don't want to wait and see what happens in 5 years and see what the workforce looks like. So we are looking forward to this exciting transition, and we'll take any questions that you have. Thanks, Pam. It felt like it was all one breath.
You're not used to giving these presentations.
Exactly, not this long-winded, yeah. Hopefully it wasn't.
Questions or comments? Ms. Wolf-Boynton.
So thank you for that excellent presentation. So this is exciting. So I'm wondering when it's going to be rolled out to, and when the rest of the district is going to hear about this wonderful new acronym, and what your first steps are going to be.
Okay, that's a good one, right? So, I mean, here we're unveiling it and rolling it out today. We intend to get it out to the rest of the district soon, at least the name change and the mission, the vision. And ideally, in the budgeting process, if there's any additional resources that are needed, we'll address those within that process that already exists. What did I miss?
Well, I think what was important was for the internal staff to first really embrace this so that they didn't feel something external was going to be imposed, that they didn't know what their role was. And so it's taken us a while to help create that agency and ownership for that internal group. They're very excited about it now, and that's half the battle, so that when we go to unroll the new name, etc., we have a Department of Advocates already in place. So that was a big investment in time, trying to really listen to what was important to them, where did they see themselves as they fit into the process. The next step was to get your approval and your perception. Without that, there really isn't an easy roll forward. So we're here for that purpose. And Wendy and I just said when we met the other day that as soon as we are in that comfortable place with you, that we then will do a timeline and start to detail these three pivotal areas of importance. And as she said, her team has been working so hard on all of these things. It is time. My role is to help look at what are the roles and functions. Do you have the right talent within each role? Do we need additional people to help bridge this gap? Because when you really do this well, as we've learned from Dr. Holcomb, the author of the book, you need liaisons who can go back and forth with information so that you're reducing the silos. There's an HR silo and there are school administrators trying to put high-quality teachers in front of students. So the department needs to have people who can cross both ways. We handed out to the internal HR department the vision of the learner, the relationship framework, high-quality instruction, components, so they at least had the vocabulary as they started to see things come through in the recruitment materials, etc. So we do have a lot more to do, but as I said, internal staff was first to create ownership. Your approval and questions and edits and modifications are next after that. we will then present the next phase. Does that make sense to you?
So, I mean, just to give you an example, we have one person that does our recruiting here. And, you know, that person can only handle so much, right? And as you'll tell by my report, where we hired, I think, 46 new people this month. But anyway, if we had other resources, I talked about a grow your own program. That would be, I mean, that takes time, but if we could do some outreach and create more programs where people are getting into the pipeline. And, you know, ideally, it would benefit Milford, but it will definitely benefit the profession of teaching and keep people coming throughout it. But also, you know, recognition. We'd like to do a little more employee recognition. We'd like to do identifying emerging and aspiring leaders and trying to, you know, work with teaching and learning to develop those folks. Cross-endorsement support for current teachers, say in the areas that are our shortage areas. We can work with them, perhaps, you know, have them take a class or two. Maybe we can fund part of that and then have them cross-endorsed in an area that we really need, that we have a hard time filling. So that's just an idea. I talked about paras that maybe have their bachelor's and want to be teachers, working with them and getting them through a program and developing people that way. Stay interviews. This is something that I learned from this book. We do exit interviews, but we don't do stay interviews. Why do people stay here? And what can we learn from that data? And how can we apply that to make things better to get more people to stay? So programs like that are what we're talking about in that circle, that continuum.
Very nice.
Yeah.
And just curiously, in that teachers in transition group, did we?
That's too loud.
Well, I'm sure it's not all suggested. It's all, you know, quality comments. But were you able to see any similarities of what people were saying in there with what you're hearing from people in our district,
or what you hear from people, teachers in general? Maybe not.
Well,
most
in
all
your
from our
exit
district, but
interviews
yeah.
too, there are some themes around not feeling valued and a lack of opportunity to go beyond what they're currently doing. If they don't want to be an administrator, what else can they do as a teacher to continue to support the classroom? So you saw those coaches here today. That's an incredible shift in a district to offer that kind of enhancement to what they're currently doing without a teacher having to go become an administrator, which is not what all teachers aspire to do. So that's what we're hearing in that Facebook group is, I feel really stuck. I also feel really overwhelmed. Wendy had a conversation with a special ed person recently, last week, who was on the phone with her in tears. I can't do this. And worked with her to think about how they might modify caseload, etc. And you heard Wendy breathing hard tonight. A teacher was doing the same thing, trying to talk to Wendy about, I don't know if I can keep doing this. By the end of the conversation, Wendy had calmed her down, they had a solution, and this poor teacher on a Friday afternoon could then go home and relax, not go home and rewrite a resume to go someplace else.
And we think we do a good job onboarding folks. We have a new teacher academy. We give them support during their team program. But there are a bunch of years where we kind of like send them off, right? After team, after they've been mentored, after they're tenured. And we're kind of looking at those gaps and what can we do to reach people during that time to make sure that they know that they feel valued and to see if there's anything that they need. So we talked a lot about that. What else?
Did that answer your question?
Yes, thank you so much.
Yeah, I don't know about anybody else, but I see a direct line between this presentation and going back to Dr. Kutaya's original vision, he hired you.
Yes.
And the things that she's been talking about for the last 4 years.
Right,
So.
the Board of Ed commitments, the Board of Ed goals.
Yeah.
I mean,
So.
talent management's one of them, so
Yes.
that should have been a clue, right?
A
It was a
clue.
good name, right? Thanks, Anna. So.
I knew that 4 years ago.
There you go. But no,
Yes,
I definitely agree. Yeah.
No, we worked with her, we worked with the staff, we, all had our laptops out researching all the different types of titles. you know, everything from the Office of Happiness to the Office of, you know, Engagement, and it was the internal staff that selected the name.
We didn't wanna go too far out there, you know, we like to be a little bit, go under the radar a little bit, right?
We narrowed it down to 3 and they voted.
Director of People Happiness.
So they own it.
Ms. Doyle?
How many people are currently in the HR department?
There are 4 of us.
Okay.
And then there's 2 over in benefits, who is part of, you know, Jim and I oversee benefits pretty much. But there's 4 of us.
Okay.
And as you can imagine, the things that have been added to all of our plates over the year, the new Title IX legislation, it's just, you know, we do a lot and we do it well, but we can do better.
Ms. Petrosky?
So I just wanted to say, I think this was a great presentation, and I think it's a really important piece of where we're at as a district. I think retention is clearly an issue everywhere. And I think that the ideas and the mission of making retention a big piece of that circle is critical. I mean, it costs a lot of money to train people. It costs a lot of money to constantly replace people. And that's not just money, it's time, it's effort, and it's quality for our kids, right? They have to be trained in HQI, they have to be trained in the ways of Milford. So I think that this is a very timely and important step that we need to take as a district. So thank you.
And relationships, right? A teacher leaves mid-year.
That's right.
And those students have to create a new relationship with a brand new adult, so.
Yeah, it's tricky. It's much more challenging for the kids.
Yeah.
Yes, I agree.
Ms. McDonough Souza?
Thank you. So it sounds like on one hand, obviously other districts are our competitors. We are competing for, you know, the same talent. But on the other hand, some of these ideas, you know, like the clubs and like really like the internal pipeline that will hopefully benefit Milford if they stay in Milford, but obviously that's not necessarily the case. It would seem that like working, like do you ever talk with other districts? Because that seems like something like, obviously if more districts are creating these clubs and other incentives and trying to get to students early on to you know, bring more people into the profession, that would benefit, you know, other districts in Connecticut. Do you ever talk to other
Yes,
districts?
yeah, I do. In my group, I have a group of Connecticut Personnel Administrators, CASPA, and we all have the same issue, and we all are talking about all of the same stuff. And some districts, depending on their resources, are a little further, and some are a little bit, or a lot behind us. We're kind of in the middle. But you know, anytime I talk to someone who has a program, like we have the TRP, Teachers in Residence program that we put in, I'll have to tell you more about that. But districts, you know, we consulted with other districts that are already doing this and found out how successful it was for them, so we've implemented it. So as we all start to do this, you know, we'll have a lot of information to share with one another, and it truly will help the profession in general.
Yeah.
And ideally Milford, but
Yeah.
even if it's in general, it helps us all.
Right, agreed. Thank you.
And one thing I forgot to mention when I talked about the higher education, with their experience, the University of New Haven actually closed their whole education program down a couple of years because there were so few candidates, few applicants, and they just didn't see the value anymore. So I'm hoping nobody else has to do that.
Mr. DeYoung?
Thank you. You had mentioned that nationally the teacher shortage is considered a 5-alarm fire. And you sort of anecdotally mentioned what some of our issues are. Would you consider it that serious and severe in our district as well, or are we?
No, I wouldn't, but
Okay.
that's because I think between our reputation and people wanting to come here, I mean, we're a very well-run district. We are a district, an employer of choice, and sometimes you get lucky, right? Let's be honest, you're in the right place at the right time, or someone catches your ad, or you do a job fair and someone hears it on the radio or sees it on Channel 12. We got a lot of exposure there when we did that. But we don't want to see it get to that point.
Sure.
And I do think we're probably better off than most people, than most districts. Maybe not most, but a lot. But we don't want to ever get to that point.
Okay.
we're looking from behind.
I mean, I
and
agree.
the front runners.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it seems like we're on a good path.
Yeah.
I wanted to just give you a sort of an anecdotal story, and how important this piece of diversity is. At my daughter's school, Orchard Hills, they recently hired a teacher of color, and my daughter came home and said one of her classmates, who was a student of color, told her she was so excited that there was somebody that looked like her teaching her class.
Wow.
So I was shocked to hear that, because you talk about it in the abstract world.
Yep.
But to actually see it come to fruition was really exciting. It's a testament to what you guys are doing, because I know that's a real challenge for you.
Yeah.
And so I think it's something you guys should be proud of, but also the city and the district should be really proud of.
Yeah, it's one person, but we're working,
Oh, I know,
one person
I know.
at a time.
Yeah.
And there's all kinds of statistics on how much that impacts students for the better, right?
Sure.
Like this little girl that you're talking about.
Absolutely.
So,
Thank you for sharing
Yeah,
that.
of
We
course.
really appreciate that.
definitely.
Do you wanna talk about TRP a moment? We have 2 teachers here
Yes.
in residence.
Okay, so yeah, the Teachers in Residence program is through CREC, which is another, what do you call it, a RESC, another, all these acronyms, sorry. So we've, through the budgeting process, budgeted for 2 teachers in residence to be in our schools for the whole year. So one is at Pumpkin Delight and one is at Live Oaks, and maybe we should have them down to a meeting at some point so they can talk about their experience here. But so far, so good. And we have mentor teachers, so they're in the classroom all year with their mentor teacher, as well as, so they have their bachelor's degree, and they are going to school at no cost and learning on the job for the whole year, and they go through 2 summers and 1 full school year of their own schooling to become certified. And obviously, we're helping in the process. And at the end of their 1 year, they're going to work for us after that, at the end of their program. So we've made that commitment. And,
These are teachers of color.
yes, right, 2 teachers of color, so. And so far, so good. They're lovely, and they're enjoying it, they're loving it. Our mentor teachers are loving it, so everybody's benefiting. So, and we hope to expand that in the budget process again for next year to do it with 2 more teachers, so.
Any other questions for Ms. Pasna? Ms. Doyle?
How have factors of cost of living in Milford or any of those affected the talent pool of how far, I remember some conversation about pulling teachers from fairly far away of New York and everywhere else. How is that affecting that level of leaving or staying or any of those kind of things?
Well, I think it's all relative. When we pull from other areas, they're usually planning on moving here anyway. I find that when you are hiring somebody from too far away, you're not gonna keep that person too long. So all districts are very cognizant, all employers, right, are very cognizant in trying to get that sweet spot. But ultimately, if they're the best candidate, we're gonna make them the offer and hope that they move down here. Cost of living, yeah, I just think it's relative because it's really pretty much the same everywhere. We've benefited and we've also lost, right? A lot of people from New York are moving here, and maybe people from here are moving down south, I'm not sure. So I think it all comes out in the wash.
Any other questions? Okay, seeing none, thank you so much for the presentation.
Thank you guys.
And we look forward to hearing more about this.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pasna. Thank you for joining us, Ms. Bavoy.
My pleasure.
It's nice to meet you.
Thank you so much, that's a pleasure.
She's not off the hook yet.
No, you are.
We're gonna sit down and do some more talking, so.
Yes. Okay, my water. Okay, so for my report, you have the typical monthly report, job postings, as well as the personnel recommendations, retirement terminations, and stipend appointments. I wanted to point out, let's read some numbers, because it looked like a really long report this month. There are 48 new hires on here, and 11 retirements and resignations. So we are ahead of the game, but you can see it's a moving target every month. That is a lot for 1 month. Out of that 48, there was 4 contracted teachers and service providers, 24 substitute teachers. So we are making some progress there by raising the per diem pay. That really helped. We got a lot of people in that job fair that we did. There's 4 sub-paras, 2 contracted secretaries, et cetera. But out of the 11, unfortunately, there was 2 teachers. So while we hired 4, we lost 2. So again, we're doing the work, we're getting great people, but unfortunately on the other side, people are leaving. The 2 people that left, I think, are in shortage areas, which makes it even harder. But, you know, we're doing pretty well still. So,
What are we up to now for pay, for substitutes?
140 per day. We increased that very early on, maybe a month, maybe 6 weeks into the school year, because we were already seeing jobs not filled. And typically, in a normal year, you'll have no problem filling sub jobs till maybe like October, November. And to face it so early, it's like we just couldn't risk it.
Questions for Ms. Pasna on the HR report? We can't call it that anymore, I guess.
know.
Mr. DeYoung?
Thank you. Two questions. One, could you update us on the search for the instructional supervisor of equity and engagement?
Okay, and actually, I forgot to mention, in this report, we have the new supervisor of early childhood programs, and actually, she's starting today, so we'll have to get her maybe at our next meeting to introduce her. And the equity position, we haven't had much luck with at this point. Applications keep trickling in. We do have to, we made a conscious effort to look at a bunch at one point, and we did rounds of interviews. We do need to do that again, but.
That was in October that we did, and
Yeah,
again.
mid-October, maybe early October. So, since then, because it's still been open, but we weren't really, satisfied at that point, so it's an ongoing search.
Yeah, I recognize that it's a relatively new category of position, so I'm sure that's.
And again, it's a position that most districts have begun hiring, so the
Right,
competition is,
sure.
real fierce.
And then I wanted to ask you about, I don't know, maybe a year ago, you talked about building substitutes, and how we have hired substitutes that just strictly live in each elementary school, I assume, and is it middle school and high school too, or?
Last year, after COVID, we kind of let people have 2, 3, as many as we could get, and it was at all levels. This year, we tried to just have elementary schools have 1 each. And then what's happening, again, this pipeline issue, we have interns at each school that are through the universities, and that, we can't get enough interns to man our schools. So then we had to say, all right, Orange Avenue, you have a building sub and you have an intern. Oh, you can't find an intern, you can have a second building sub.
Okay.
So if a school has 2 building subs, that's why, it's because they don't have an intern. Middle schools already have a permanent sub, they're called, and an intern, so they have 2. And high schools have 2 interns, and we've also allowed them to have a building sub, I think just at 4, because they had some long-term subbing needs over there.
And the building subs, can you remind me, they're 5 days a week?
Yeah, so
And-
they're 5 days a week, they're paid $140 a day, the same, but
Yeah.
they have the luxury of knowing that they're working every day and they're working in the same school.
Mhm.
And we also give them a small amount of personal days or not vacation days, personal days and sick days.
Okay.
I think it's like two personal days and 5 sick days, just a little something. And the opportunity to purchase benefits if they like them.
Because that was born out of COVID, right?
Yes,
Okay,
definitely.
but we're planning on staying with that. for
Yeah,
the
I think,
foreseeable
the
future.
relationship framework lends itself to
Yeah.
having a sub that the kids all know.
Right.
And that goes from class to class. And so it has been really helpful, especially in the shortage of substitutes.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Talking about subs, can you tell me the difference between a professional learning series sub and a regular sub? I saw 2 different
Yes,
categories.
actually, I should have brought that up too. So that is a new program this year, and it's an elementary professional learning sub. So we have these days where teachers are being pulled for professional learning, very important, HQI, all the other professional learnings that they do. And the days are set out on the calendar well ahead of time. So this year, we took that calendar and broke it out by month and listed these professional learning days and tried to attract people. We posted for it, and it's $150 a day, but they had to commit, they had to come in, actually, and sit with me at my desk and pick 30 days. So they had to commit to the 30 exact days, so they could pick, Orchard Hills on this day, Calf Penn on this day. And they don't know what grade they'll be in, but they know that day they're going to that school, and if they picked 30 of them, they're paid like a little bit of a differential, if you will. And we've, I think, seen some success in that. We're still looking maybe for a couple more, but that's really helped. And if these same subs would like to substitute on a regular day, a non-professional learning day, something that they haven't committed to, they still can at the $140. So we find some of them are doing that, some aren't, depending on their schedule. So it's worked out pretty well so far.
Yeah, okay. And I also noticed on page 25 in the packet, there's a personal recommendation for a complimentary evaluator under the administrative program.
Yep, so that is the program. Our administrators evaluate teachers, obviously. And it's, a pretty daunting thing because they have, if you're non-tenured, you have a certain number, and it's more than if you're tenured. So in order to help our administrators, we have a few, I think we have 4 or 5 that we have hired, complimentary evaluators, that basically, actually, they're doing some training tomorrow. We calibrate their training and their expectations on how to evaluate, and we have them assist our principals, the principals that have heavier loads. Some of our schools are bigger than others. Some of our
We've had that for a few years.
yeah, this is our 3rd or 4th year.
Yeah.
And so we hired a new person from the outside, but
I don't remember.
typically, we have some retired administrators that help us out.
Okay.
Dr. Dudley, Mrs. Swift, people like that, so. Yeah, it works pretty well.
So they have to be they have to have the 092?
Yes.
Certified
Yeah.
administrators.
And everyone that we've taken on has been a former administrator, principal for a number of years.
Okay.
So it's just like a little supplemental help.
Any other questions? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
And lastly, we'll turn things over to Mr. Ricitelli for a disbursement report.
Thank you, Dr. Kutaya, Mrs. Glenn, members of the board. In your package, you have the usual listing of all of the disbursements for the district for the month of October, all in the amount of $1,500. And those items that are COVID related are highlighted in yellow, as you've requested. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you have.
Questions for Mr. Ricitelli? Okay, see none.
Thank you.
That was easy.
Congratulations, the superintendent's report was done.
Thank you, Dr. Kutaya. Ms. Petrosky, do you have a motion for the consent agenda?
Motion that the Milford Board of Education approves consent agenda items, minutes for consideration, October 10th, 2022 business meeting, October 24th, 2022 committee of a whole meeting.
Do you have a second?
Second.
Mr. Fowler has seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. All right, now we are going to adjourn into an executive session. Ms. Petrosky, do you have a motion?
A motion to adjourn to executive session to discuss salaries for non-certified, non-union employees. Invited into the session are Dr. Kutaya, Mr. Ricitelli, Ms. Capazna, and Mr. Giancola.
Is there a second?
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Okay, we're going to go down to the conference room that we have started. Yes. Correct?
Yes.
Okay, we are reconvened into public session at 10:06. Ms. Petrosky, do you have a motion?
Motion that the Milford Board of Education approves the sum of $198,990 to be used for salary increases for non-union employees at the discretion of the superintendent for 2023 to 2024.
Is there a second?
I second.
Mr. Fowler seconded. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Do we have any board comment this evening? I had the pleasure of attending the math night at Meadowside School, my old haunt. And we were talking about diversity earlier. I just want to say it was a marvelous display of diversity at Meadowside. It's just incredible. It's even more diverse than it was when I was there. And the kids had a lot of fun with their math, showing off their math prowess, and it was a family night, so it was just a great experience, and I appreciated the invitation.
Can I just add something?
Sure.
I'm excited for the football game. Thanksgiving. I've been to many Law games this season, and so I'm rooting for Law, sorry. Hey, well, my nephew's playing. So we look forward to it and hope we have nice weather and wish
Yeah, I hope
everyone
you
a
have
happy
nice weather
holiday.
too.
No, not me.
I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We're adjourned at 10:08. Thank you all.
That's right.
If you want to attend the game, just show your Board of Ed badge.
Yes.